Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about what laws in the Old Testament we as Catholics have to be beholden to and which ones we don't have to. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritui Sancto. Succuteram principio et nunc et semper et seculi seculorum. This video is actually not going to be that long because I'm not going to go through every law that we find in the Torah. But I think we can divide out the laws into two major categories. And I think you can see the answer to this, of course, is going to be found in the Catechism. Jesus talks about it in Matthew when he's excoriating or ripping the Pharisees about, oh, you're so concerned about washing the outside of the cup and the inside of the cup. And he says, don't worry about what you put into your body, worry what comes out of your body. And then he lists a bunch of things that we would consider to be sins. And so I think the best way, and certainly St. Paul talks about these in the Apostles too, and I think a lot of Catholics and certainly a lot of Christians in general take Leviticus out of context. But the two major categories is this. One of them is if it's in accordance with the natural law, with natural moral law, then we still abide by it. And if it's not in that, then we don't have to abide by it. So the ones that we don't have to abide by are going to be laws that are specific to, let's say, kosher laws. Clearly, as Catholics, we can eat pork. And we can eat things that, there's a wide variety of things that the ancient Israelites weren't supposed to eat. And we can eat all of those. And some of them, again, is referenced by Jesus, where he talks about it's not what you put in the law, put it in your mouth, that desecrates you. And then you see in the Acts of the Apostles where Peter has the dream about what we can eat, what we can't eat. So these are just some scriptural reasons as to why we can essentially eat whatever we want and we're not prescribed or prohibited by the Levitical laws on that. But really the main reason is because the church founded by Jesus Christ says we don't have to. So we don't have to look at scriptural examples. So when it comes to dietary stuff, when it comes to feast days, tell that to the Seventh-day Adventists, when it comes to all these things, we don't have to abide by them because they're not ordained or aligned with natural moral law. So what do I mean by that? So there's different types of laws where we have civil laws, we have canon law, and then we have natural law. Natural law is kind of the law that's just wired in nature. And these laws are always going to be right or wrong. There's no, as much as the postmodernists and the relativists, moral relativists will tell you, well, sometimes murder is wrong, but it really depends on who you're talking to and what's the situation. What's wrong for you might not be wrong for me. It's like, no, there's absolute truths. But this is one of the fights that we have with the moral relativists. This is one of the fights that, say, Pius X was fighting 100 years ago. But things that other cultures would have perceived to be wrong and what we've always known as being wrong are laws that we still apply today. So I guess the classic example would be the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are things that we still apply as Catholics because that is a good kind of encapsulation of the natural law. So killing is always bad. To murder somebody is bad in every culture throughout every historical period, regardless if we don't need a law to tell us that. Murder is wrong. Now, killing somebody in self-defense, is different, but murdering is wrong. Lying is wrong. And all these things that you see, fornication is wrong, adultery is wrong. So these are just wired into natural law. Now, of course, today, tons of people will tell you that fornication's not wrong at all, but these are the moral relativists and these are the atheists who've fallen away from natural law. They're more about hedonism and selfishness and what you think is not what applies to me. But these are things that are found in nature. So some of the other Levitical laws that are not going to be mentioned in the 10 Commandments per se would be the acts of sodomy. That is something that's in what we perceive to be natural moral law. As well, acts of bestiality, acts of incest. So these are examples of things that are in the kind of the Torah that we still have to abide by. But the easiest way to kind of figure it out is, of course, read the Catechism. But in general categories, if it's things that the Jews still do in terms of like outward acts, feast days, what you're supposed to eat, what you're not supposed to eat. We don't have to abide by any of those as Christians. What we have to abide by are things that are aligned with morality and with the natural law. And it's going to be and they're already wired in us. We already know what they are. We don't necessarily need to look at Leviticus or Exodus or wherever to know that these are wrong. These are just naturally wired in us. And you can kind of see the natural law ones kind of repackaged in love your neighbor as yourself, because we wouldn't murder our neighbor, we wouldn't lie to our neighbor, we shouldn't steal our neighbor or covet thy neighbor. And so you kind of see that played out there. So guys, that's a quick encapsulation of what laws you should follow, what you shouldn't. And certainly there's tons of Catholic references to give you more pinpoint ones as to what you should and what you shouldn't follow. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share button. Share with others. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.